As high school students worldwide continue to face the uncertainty of not knowing when they will be back on campus, they must continue to adapt their new normal of online distance learning, which is significantly impacting not only their learning experience but also their overall well being. Hello and welcome to the Late Late Psych Show.
We are your hosts, Ausina Montero,
Camilo Igalo,
and Sofia Rey.
In this episode, we will be discussing the influence the COVID-19 pandemic has had upon FDR high school students' learning experience through the recent findings that we have collected. Amongst these findings, we've determined that the three main influential factors are changes in academic performance, both positive and negative, the impact on a student's well-being, and how that can affect their learning experience, and finally, how the environment in which they're staying is ultimately affecting their learning.
First of all, can we talk about how all four of these students, regardless of their age group, have been able to maintain their grades or even better improve their overall academic performance by the end of June of 2020?
Yes, completely. Throughout our 4 interviews, all the interviews expressed how that although they had a rough start, they were able to overcome these obstacles and end up with an impressive result.
Speaking on this, I think one of the most important points of our finding has been this reoccurring pattern of how distance learning has effectively increased the academic performance of high school students at FDR.
However, let's keep in mind that this was all last school semester, where they continued to have the same classmates and teachers, and the only transition was from school to distance learning.
Precisely that. Another pattern that we've been able to identify is how 3/4 of the students, excluding the current senior, are currently struggling to adjust to their new schedules, specifically the newly IB students and the freshman student.
Both IB students have mentioned that due to the extensive content the program covers, most teachers, in an attempt to cover all of this content, their explanations can sometimes be very brief, and in doing so, it only allows students to have a very vague understanding of the topic.
Because of this, students have been tested as they've been required to effectively use their asynchronous time in order to complete their class assignments.
Even more so, all of our interviewees have reflected on how they believe they've become more self-driven learners, and this ultimately traces back to distance learning.
Our junior interview actually stated, "Yes, I've always considered myself an independent person, but after distance learning is like a whole other level. I'm so much more motivated for school because I feel like there's so much more of me that I have to put in, which overall has had an amazing impact on my well-being."
I'm glad you mentioned well-being, seeing how the impact distance learning is having on these students does not only derive from their academic learning, but most importantly, the influence it has on their mental health.
Most students globally, but specifically at FDR, have been using Zoom as their main source of communication. All these students have stated how, given the circumstances, Zoom is the next best thing, and they are very grateful that at least they get to interact with teachers and classmates.
I really want to point out that a recurring phrase that our 4 interviewees all stated was, "given the circumstance." They later went on to explain that virtual interaction like the one they're receiving through Zoom is nothing compared to what they have been used to back on campus.
Definitely. I mean, how can you even compare that? The lack of social interaction between peers, students, and teachers, along with the other factors, are what is negatively impacting these students' well-being.
Coincidentally, 2 of our interviewees that are currently staying outside of Lima during the pandemic have recalled that the major contributor towards their well-being has been the environment in which they are staying in. These environments include Barcelona, Spain, and Miami, Florida, while the other 2 interviewees are residing in Lima.
We found a correlation between how both of the interviewees who at the moment are outside of Lima have expressed that they've been able to explore more extracurricular activities due to the fact that the countries in which they are staying don't have as strict restrictions as Lima does. Meanwhile, the 2 interviewees in Lima are limited towards the activities or hobbies they can pursue, which overall is negatively impacting their learning experience, seeing as they don't get as many breaks.
Another correlation we found between both of the interviewees outside of Lima is how, given the fact that they are not in their homes, they've had a difficult time finding an adequate workspace, which for the 2 interviewees in Lima hasn't been an issue since they are home and have been able to benefit from having everything they need.
Overall, the sampling method that we selected, which was a combination of random and opportunity sampling, we believe was the most effective, seeing as the results we've obtained have given us multiple perspectives.
However, we want to point out that we purposely narrowed down our options for 2 boys and 2 girls. It just so happens that our random sampling elected 2 people staying in Lima and 2 who are currently in foreign countries.
Even though we've discovered multiple perspectives, which could potentially be applied towards the greater population of FDR high school students, it would have been beneficial in order to improve our research for us to collect more responses with the aim of generalizing the patterns.
Similarly, our semi-structured interview was a success, given that it gave students the chance to openly express their opinions on the impact distance learning has had on both their academic life and personal life without risking going off topic.
Yes, completely. An informal conversation with open-ended yet direct questions was indeed the most effective, and what we believe helped get the answers we were aiming for.
As for potential paths our research could take, it would definitely be aimed towards determining whether the previous patterns we've mentioned can be supported with a larger sample of people.
Specifically, we would intend to focus on the impacts the environment in which students are located has had on their academic and personal lives.
Overall, if we were to continue with this research, based on the information that we would continue to collect from a larger sample of students, we would then focus on using these findings to aim to implement solutions in order to improve their learning experience at FDR, as well as their well-being.
Well, guys, I think that's it for today's episode. Thank you once again for tuning into the Late Late Psych Show. We hope you enjoy and join us on our next episode. Bye.
Bye.